Charles, we are inside today.
We are indeed.
Happy 5th of July.
Thanks so much, Jason.
I took the day off yesterday, so we didn't have a 4th of July show, but that's fine.
Yeah, well, it was pretty amazing reading up on what some of our esteemed representatives and people on the left were saying about 4th of July. You know, Ben and Jerry's ice cream, saying that, you know, something about
stolen land. We should give it back.
Give back the stolen land, and you know, one congressperson saying something crazier than the next, proving, I think, that many of them, and not just people who could have gone to college because of affirmative action, people across the ethnic spectrum in Congress, particularly on the left, are just scared shit stupid. I mean, they obviously didn't pay attention in class. They just probably cozied up to their far left-leaning teachers to get their A's or whatever they got, and those teachers don't know squat about actually what truly transpired in American history, predating that in English history, predating that in history around the world. And so we really do have a large number of extremely stupid people setting policy, making rules, deciding who gets prosecuted, who doesn't get prosecuted.
Yeah.
And that doesn't augur well.
No. Nah, and then auger is something else, but we don't need to talk about that. Back on the Ben and Jerry's thing for a second, Charles. When I saw that guy say that, my first thought was, I guarantee that Ben Cohen of Ben and Jerry's has a much bigger home than what I've got, right? So because if this is stolen land, I'm on a vertical strip of it that me and like 12 other people are occupying a tiny little. Why doesn't that guy go to some reservation and say, hey, you guys can have my house, here's the BMW, take the ice cream business?
Well, let's, as we'd say, let's deconstruct that comment a little bit.
Yeah.
So here we are in New York, and we know the official story is that Peter Stuyvesant traded was it Stuyvesant or Minuit? I forget, an early settler traded a small amount of beads and other things for a large portion of what is now Manhattan.
Right.
Query: where did the people with whom that person was doing business, how did they acquire valid title?
They killed other indigenous people and took it.
And for how long going back was that going back?
Yeah, like forever. They were probably, that's what I was thinking, aren't they? Weren't they just be killing each other and swapping? This is the way the earth has worked since it was created. Hey, nice place, bang, mine now.
Right, well, exactly. It wasn't like, you know, when whoever it was who did that first trade, getting the evil white men on Manhattan, it wasn't as if they went to the local title company and said, you know, I just want to make sure before I give you these beads that I'm going to have valid title, and I want to understand how you and your people actually acquired this property, because I'd hate to get stolen land for beads.
Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate didn't have an office?
No, Sotheby's, none of that.
Oh.
You know?
That's surprising.
And so you have these people, we talked about this off air a lot of time, when you're telling a story, you have to decide what is the beginning.
Right.
You don't have hours and hours and hours or days or weeks or months to tell a story. You have to pick a beginning. And most of the American history starts with Columbus. You know, it doesn't go further back than that, and it needs to go a lot further back than that. And there are accounts of various and sundry people getting here before 1492. They may be apocryphal, they may be true. There's evidence of settlement up in I think Newfoundland or something like that. There's certainly evidence down in what was formerly Spanish-controlled America. And you know, to begin this whole argument, particularly on 4th of July, one of them said, Cori Bush, I think, who's really remarkably stupid. That must be a qualification. To be in the squad, you've got to be, squad stands for stupid. You know, we only want the really dumb people on our stupid squad. But she said, I think it's she or somebody like her said, July 4th is a perfect day to discuss reparations.
Oh.
You know.
That's like, can you buy me an iPhone? Check, please. Reparations or get the hell out of here. I don't know. There's so many ads all over the New York Post. I can't even show people this Ben and Jerry's article, but apparently you can save money on Adidas. This is crazy. This is exactly what Charles, you can't even read the news because of this sponsored message, and this is why I've created the direct to sponsor method where people can sponsor this show by going to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. People can tell that I'm looking for new 3D shoes and that little cube cam because I'm thinking about possibly rebuilding some of the 3D cameras. You know, we've got that Apple Vision Pro thing coming soon, so maybe I'll have to be buying more tiny little cameras, but you can't read the news.
You need more camera equipment. You don't have enough of that.
Yeah. The other interesting thing that happened on the 4th of July is this ruling from a Trump-appointed judge in Louisiana who has blocked U.S. officials from tech contacts in the First Amendment case. This is that case brought on behalf of the Gateway pundit and Jay Bhattacharya and some other plaintiffs, brought by the former attorneys general of Louisiana and Missouri. And I could not believe it, Charles. I think there is some deep meaning to a judge giving you a 155-day order on the 4th of July. He really meant it.
Right. Well, if you go back up to the top for a second, look at the number of comments already on this thing. 8,509 comments. Wow. That's a lot for something that takes 9 minutes to listen to. So clearly this is a story that's getting people's attention. Yeah. And I think the whole area of not just government contact with social media, the whole benefit of the bargain that is involved in social media, where mostly younger people start out and they say, oh, this is great, I can use this for free.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll spend all my time getting more Facebook friends or more Twitter followers and more this, and I'll tweet and I'll do all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And the social media companies never have to explain what you get. You know, the has-gets analysis, what you has and what you gets.
Yeah.
You have all this information that you're giving for free into the system, and the system's monetizing it. You have no idea how they're monetizing it, and the share owners and the managers and the other employees of these various companies are doing very well off you. You should have to explain. I've talked about this before. I'm no fan of Michael Bloomberg's calorie counting menu adjustment, but here's an area where this is a newfangled shiny object. It appears to be free. It's not that new anymore, but it appears to be free.
Right.
All kids love this kind of stuff. They get hooked on TikTok and other things like that. And I think if ever there were a case where the government should be interceding and forcing these social media companies, maybe via the SEC if they're publicly traded, to say, listen, you know, you have only so much sentient time in a day when you're awake, right? And you should be doing other things than being on social media. But it appears to us that the people who are on social media spend an average of, pick a number, 60 minutes a day, all day, or whatever, using this stuff. And they think their messages are private when they're not. You know, so they're saying all kinds of stuff. Who knows who's reading it? How the social media companies are selling that information into advertisers, et cetera. You should be told, look, this is catnip. You know, you think it's free, but you're giving away every year $25,000 worth of information, or you know, whatever the number is, and you're getting back bupkis for it. Right? Is this something you want your 8-year-old child to do, or your 12-year-old, or your 15-year-old, or your 18-year-old, or for that matter, is this something a 65-year-old grandmother should
wants
be doing?
To be involved in? There's a more sinister aspect too that I think we're maybe only just realizing now. And you reminded me when you said we don't really know how they're selling this information. That's true. And I think they don't even necessarily know how they're selling it because they're just putting it on offer. And once it's given to somebody else, what they do with it is sort of unknown. There was a bit of a dust up on Twitter in that one of my adversaries in the lawsuits has had his company Bot Sentinel kicked off of Twitter. It's interesting because this was happening just amid Elon Musk talking about scraping and platform manipulation, which is exactly what I allege this thing does. And the reason I'm bringing it up is not only because I despise Chris Boozy and want to see justice served to him and Bot Sentinel. when somebody has a company like this that accesses the Twitter API, yeah, I mean, everyone's like, oh, they're advertising to me. What is that worth? What about the fact that this person can now track your real-time GPS location? And what if they want to get in the business of, hey, who wants to pay me $20,000 to kill a person? And they can now get to you with this in a way that maybe Twitter doesn't realize until, oh, we shouldn't be selling the information like that.
Right, and I recall, it might have been Obama even casually talking, maybe it was in the Stanford conference, but he was at one point talking about it's amazing the power that these combined networks have. Apparently, going back to 30 years ago, pre-internet, there was a guy I worked with, I won't say his name, who was a little bit more. He was ahead of the pack compared to the standard CEO back then in the early 1990s, who did not really normally mess around with computers and electronics and stuff like that. So he would make a practice of putting together what he called a PIB book, public information book. Why he would call it a PIB book is beyond me. It should have been just a PIB.
Public information book.
Right, exactly. Anyway, and he would go into these CEOs and he would say, look at all the information I was able to get on your company.
Whoa.
And my reaction to that is, a good CEO would say, that's like no value added because I already have this information.
But maybe they're concerned that information is available to anybody, or no?
No, it's a publicly traded company. But the point is, go to
that
social
media. Didn't go well.
No, the social media. But think about now, if you've got the super user level access to Twitter, to Facebook, to Google, to the phone companies, the banks, whatever. Think of what a corrupt partisan group, maybe who were contractors to the government for deniability. Think what they could do in an instant to get all this information together, and they probably have different ways of quickly profiling you. We have people in minority groups around the country upset that police are profiling.
Right.
Let's say they're looking at you and saying,
make a snap judgment.
But
you're talking about people aggregating all of your information, finding out who you know across applications.
Right. With the new quantum computers, which are so much faster than the current ones, think of the leverage that the government and corrupt actors in and around the government could have against their political rivals, against their political opponents, against just people they don't like.
Yes.
And who's going to discipline that? It's evident that our present system is incapable of disciplining rogue actors, whether it's under the Bush administration, both Bush administrations, the Cheneys, you name it, under HW, under Obama and Clinton, and now under Biden. It's crystal clear that the people who should be the grown-ups in the room and should be saying, no, you can't do this. And you're going to prison for doing this. Yeah.
They love it, though. They're doing it for their benefit.
He's smiling in that picture.
I know, it's amazing. If you put this in, you get so many. He must have some Bell's palsy or something because there's so many pictures of him doing this. It's so weird.
Yeah.
But it's not just big government and quantum computing that can do this, Charles. Like I've said, there's a number of times that I've been approached by people on the street who couldn't possibly have recognized me in Norway in that hotel. So somebody has access to this data. And yes, I know that the government and the NSA can get into all of that sort of stuff, but I don't think that they're doing that for just everybody. And I think that it's a bigger deal when somebody who's a contractor to a subcontractor to somebody who has a program that has the Twitter API, and maybe that person says, hey, you know what, in addition to all this government subcontracting stuff that we've got access to, I have this thing over here from Twitter which gives us this person's real-time GPS location. Let's just use that in combination with it. There he is, go get him.
Well, yeah, wasn't there an issue with that in either Afghanistan or something where people were using a dating app? I forget if it was Tinder or something like that, and bad people were able to soldiers were using Tinder or something like that, and bad actors were able to figure out where these soldiers were.
I believe it. I think a lot of these apps, this is Yeah, it says how the U.S. military buys location data from ordinary apps. Now, I mean, I don't think it makes sense. If it's legal to sell this stuff, I don't think you can stop the government from buying it and let everybody else buy it. That doesn't make any kind of practical sense. But if you don't want this stuff out, then, I mean, they're saying, yeah, all these different apps are giving you, you got to be crazy to go into war with your cell phone with you.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Charles. I mean, they really have got everybody down this path of, here's Locate X, location data product from a company called Babel Street. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good.
De-anonymize a person. So it says the data is anonymized, but the source said we could absolutely de-anonymize a person. Play with it, to be honest, the former employee added.
So in other words, some 20-something person could decide they want to figure out where a famous celebrity is who's using this and tip off the National Enquirer. Or, yeah.
And when somebody hears, oh, this person tipped off, where Elon Musk's jet is, when the day comes around that if it's, Jamal Khashoggi or whoever, somebody wants to push a button on that guy.
Yeah. Now, before we go too much more deeply into, and before we enter the First Amendment Forum, I mean, the art department here has really done a great job.
Well, thank you. I never saw this movie, actually, but this was a Johnny Depp movie where I think he's, obviously like a cocaine dealer or something like that. And now it's Joe Blow. This is outrageous, Charles. I mean, I guess it's not the first time there was cocaine in the White House. It's certainly the first time we've ever heard about it being found. And what the hell is this story? They're like, possible cocaine, possibly found. It's like, okay, so what is it? You got Hunter Biden staying over for the weekend, a little baggie of white powder. What is that?
Right.
Possible cocaine.
Right. Well, remember, he was there the past 2 weekends. He's been with his father at Camp David.
Right.
He was there last week. He was there for the state dinner, Indian state dinner.
Got to do a bump before that.
And after.
Yeah, I mean, please.
How do you digest
Talk to
the
all
food?
These people.
Yeah. Probably serve beef curry, of all things, but which would be a no-no. But it just sends a horror on so many levels. This is a horrible state of affairs.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to think that it's a good idea that in schools, I actually told the teachers of my children, I want you to be tougher on them than you ordinarily would be. I don't want you to just give them a pass. I want you to really make sure that they're doing their homework. And who's this? Cheryl Casson blasting it?
I mean, I don't normally look at the Daily Beast, but they're blasting tasteless comments linking Hunter Biden to White House cocaine. By the way, they're changing the name to the Doin White House. I mean, come on, you got to be an idiot. Very worrisome. Cocaine is a serious drug. Very worrisome.
Oh, yeah.
Someone could have a problem. That's what's worrisome. No, what's worrisome is you got a drug addict. See,
well, if I can interrupt you,
yes,
what's worrisome is not just that you have a drug addict. What's worrisome to me is that in the election of 2020, in the first debate, when Kamala Harris smoked Joe Biden in that debate, when he was on the ropes, when he should have been he should have dropped out in whenever it was, late 2019, early 2020, we didn't know, because the FBI...
Didn't know what?
We didn't know the extent of the Biden family's possible corruption.
Right.
Because the FBI, which in theory had been investigating it since late 18, early 19, was not investigating.
They were the ones bringing the cocaine to the White House.
Well,
we're investigating.
The Secret Service was following, Hunter around Las Vegas with the drugs and whatever in the rental car. I mean, so here's the case where it is fair, I think, to go back over the history of the 2020 election, because so much crucial evidence was suppressed, indeed, on purpose by our government, which may have put pressure on social media and certainly put pressure on corporate media, spiking the New York Post story, for example. Yeah. So much crucial evidence was withheld from the average voter. We know from, I think, a story 2 years ago that had, back then, 2 years ago, the public known, a poll 2 years ago, had the voting public known back then what they knew, before the election, what they knew then 2 years ago, an estimated 9% of Democrats would have shifted their vote away from Biden, and Trump certainly would have won.
Yeah.
So, but now it's far worse than that. Not only is it the laptop from hell, but now we know that this bonehead on the right is a serial liar. He's a serial plagiarizer and liar. He said all along he knew nothing about his son's business. He didn't know the details. He just knew that the way that you get a beach house and a mansion in Wilmington, and evidently the Biden family has this island property in the Virgin Islands through the uncle. The way you do all that is you don't ask exactly what Joe does for a living, and don't ask Hunter exactly where he got the money.
How could he? I mean, this is ridiculous. This is like if you had a 15-year-old son and he starts buying motorcycles and leather jackets, you'd be like, hey, where the hell is all this money coming from? He just doesn't ask. The guy has no job, recovering drug addict, and suddenly he's buying Porsche 911 turbos and houses in Malibu. It's like, this excuse just doesn't fly that I never spoke to him about his business.
Well, beyond that, we know from, at least I know from the experience I had with one person going through getting a top security clearance, normally it's pretty tough to get a security. There was a story, I think, the other day that Joe Biden today could not get a top security clearance, given what they know about him and his family, right?
Yeah.
What's known, forget about what's suppressed. And then you think about who is benefiting from the Biden presidency. Certainly not the American worker. The Chinese are benefiting, though. Think how they're benefiting.
Hunter Biden is benefiting.
In theory, yeah.
He's not in jail, and he's
right.
doing blow all over the place. It seems
in the White House.
Seems like a benefit. He's like, they're doing White House. I should alert our viewers that we're going to, Charles is a little bit reserved right now because he's holding back the full ammunition for the First Amendment Forum, which is going to begin in under 10 minutes. People can join us on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. It's a good time to remind people also to follow Charles on Twitter. It's amazing, Charles. I would have thought you'd have over 100,000 by now. It seems like you've been sort of stuck around 30,000 for almost...
Yeah, for a long time. I was closer to 40, and then they did the conservative purge.
Oh, right.
And if I had stayed on the trajectory that I had been on, it doesn't bother me. I want to get there about, I'd say there are probably 100 people in the world I want to get the message to. Those would be the attorney generals of the 50 U.S. states and the similar type people in, call it 50 countries in the world. That's what I want. I'm very grateful to have the other followers, but I'd love to have people decide that it is important to hold politicians, whether it be Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, George W. Bush, that no one is above the law. And when you use a presidential foundation to subsidize the lifestyle of this idiot, both of these idiots, people are exercised about Joe Biden maybe taking $40 million and not. First of all, that's a very low amount of money to
destroy the entire country.
To settle for like destroying the U.S. and humbling us before the Chinese. $40 million. It's like
stupid.
It's ridiculous, and that this person would even flirt with doing this.
Yeah.
And think about the drama of this. This guy, this idiot, was selling the country out as a senator.
Well, actually, we've got a comment here from Porch View Farm, who's telling us that his father was the chief of staff for a congressman in 1975 and had to deal with Biden all the time and hated him. He was corrupt back then.
Yeah, he's obviously, he's one of these guys. He's a wise ass who's gotten away his whole life. He's gotten away with grifting, and who knows in his personal life what he actually has been doing. His family is a mess. He's a mess. His wife's a mess. I don't know if you saw that July 4th thing, the event yesterday.
Well, he didn't know where to walk.
Didn't know where to walk, and she was making more sense than he was, and she wasn't making much sense. And
yeah,
I mean, it was pathetic. It was like
Biden on parade.
I don't know. I'm not really casting aspersions, although I suppose I might be, on the great country of Moldova. But I would guess the Moldova Independence Day celebration is far more elegant and dignified, and the leader of that country than this moron.
Yeah. Well, Charles, we're just about out of time here. I do want to tell you that our viewers are liking this new casual day attire. They're delighted to see you freed of the sports coat and complimenting what is probably a bespoke shirt, if I had to guess.
It's not, but thank you.
Oh, well, there you go. So people can be able to join us in 5 minutes on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I'm going to call on Crowdsource the Truth viewers to become sponsors today. If you've been watching for a long time, it is more important than ever. You can join on Odyssey for as little as $3 per month. It's the most economical way that people can join, and it's more important now than ever because social engineers have moved into this debanking, aggressive mode. You saw Nigel Farage was putting out stuff on Twitter. There are other things happening where I'm starting to detect that this is their next move. Obviously, Laura got hit with this way back when, and she's been the canary in the coal mine for a lot of different things. She's absolutely destroying the DeSantis campaign. We got a lot to talk about, so people will join us in the First Amendment Forum. Thanks to all of the sponsors who have kept this show going for 6+ years. We'll see everybody